No, my friends, I had to restart this video. It said I was logged off even though I wasn't logged off. So it seems that there had been some issue with the very individuals, possibly, that we're talking about in this video today. So, I'm going to make sure I connect to Wi-Fi in this case, also, along with DSL, just to ensure that this issue isn't something that has to do with my computer itself. So today's topic, of course, is the topic as you see written above. I'm just right now enabling Wi-Fi. So go ahead and read the summary here, and I'll read it again. Welcome, Shreyank. So we're going to be talking about tonight the Rakshasa religion, the Yahudim, the Jesuits, their infiltration, and the Krishna cults they've formed, both directly and via knowing and unknowing proxies. How and why this is happening. So you've all experienced this, the lack of welcome in either the dead silent treatment or all-out aggression from these Krishna cults, their members across the board. So we're going to talk about why this is actually happening, and why ultimately this is actually a very good thing that will allow you better insight on the full situation and a clearer ability to understand what we're talking about tonight. So, like I said before, everybody knows pretty much already about anyone who's been involved with Krishna consciousness for any length of time whatsoever, even just a few months, you'll find out about this, that the International Society for Krishna Consciousness has been infiltrated by corrupt individuals. And those corrupt individuals, in most cases, have been related to Judaic either family lines, surroundings, backgrounds, etc., specifically the Judaic religion backgrounds connected to that, and also the ethnic factors as well. So this is a very common ground thing here. Now also these individuals, as most people know, were involved in specifically killing Srila Prabhupada by cadmium poisoning, which happened over time, and this has actually been confirmed now. It's been solidly confirmed that this is the case, that he was poisoned by cadmium, the way he left his body, etc. It's been verified beyond any shadow of a doubt. So, now that we know this, that the suspicions had been correct all along, and we knew the suspicions were correct. We were just trying to find the evidence for it. But you also all know, I'm sure, about when you find out about this, then what most people do is then they go to what are known as the Ritvik Sampradaya groups, which are also you will find equally unwelcoming and equally unfriendly, and even in most cases more so and worse than the International Society of Krishna Consciousness side of the equation. And their entirety of focus is fixated on exposing conspiracies, etc., which is a good thing in and of itself, but then the other side of the equation, they go all the way in the other direction, as psychotically and as cult-like as the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, where they then take Prabhupada basically as their body bag for their sins, to dump all their sins on him, and treat him as this Messiah-type figure, comparable to the Christians in the way they treat Jesus Christ. So I've already gone into those elements far more in depth in other videos. Tonight's video specifically, we're going to discuss why this infiltration is happening, why we are being treated like this everywhere we go. You, yourselves, me, and why we get along with each other and we can understand each other, where we're coming from in terms of Krishna consciousness, etc. But where these other Krishna cults we try to interact with and talk to, they simply never welcome us among them, never. And because why? Because we ask all the right questions. We ask what they consider to be too many questions. So we ask questions that neither the ISKCON side or the Ritvik Sampradaya are able to answer. Also, the third group, which has also been infiltrated by these two interests, specifically the group that has been infiltrated especially by Jesuit interests, has been from what all the evidence is pointed to, has been the Gaudiya Math. So they've also been infiltrated by Judaic elements. But they especially seem to have been infiltrated by Jesuit-specific elements, whereas Khan seems to be more specifically Judaic infiltrated, and the Ritviks seem to be more sort of a proxy-controlled opposition, unknowingly, type of an infiltration, to where the individuals amongst the Ritviks may not necessarily themselves be of the Judaic side or whatever, but basically the entire ideology, the fold, it's designed to just be the opposition to the other groups. And it's designed to be just as locked down and just as causing of cultism as the others. So the Gaudiya Matha, which is basically now the infiltrated organization that Bhaktisiddhanta originally set up. The Gaudiya Matha, they're teaching things that have to do with like all the Brahmavadi tinged stuff, the impersonalism mixed in with the personalism, etc. Things like this. So we're going to go back into the history of India itself, right? Now, when you go back in Indian history, the Jesuits were involved there way on in the earlier days in India. And they actually had a lot to do with the people of India. So at least up until we're talking about right around and just after Lord Chaitanya's appearance time, they had a lot to do with the people of India buying into wholeheartedly the caste system idea that was based on birth, where you're born into something and you can't get out of it, which is completely non-Varnashrama, non-Vedic at all. But they convinced the population to buy into these, and a lot of other subtle like things like this were brought in under a lot of the Jesuit influence, etc., to basically cause the native population to misunderstand and doubt their own beliefs, and things like this, things of this nature. Jesuit groups are notorious for this type of behavior, and they're directly connected to the Judaic groups, who are also known for having actually spiritual and religious tenets that involve infiltration of other groups as central tenets in their scripture. So if any of you are familiar with the Babylonian Talmud, you understand that infiltration of what they refer to as the Goy, or the Goyim, is pretty much a standard thing in racist Judaism, where basically their idea is that their genetics are connected to who they literally are, eternally beyond the body, in transcendence. In essence, they believe that their temporal genetics are an eternally distinct thing that spills over into matter that has to do with them still being eternally distinct from the rest of us in transcendence, or in whatever their concocted idea of spirituality, transcendence is, which comes straight up from the Rakshasas. So to understand Judaism, Yahudism, when I say Yahudim, we're referring to the older terminology for what people know is Judaic or Judaist, things like this, the Judaic beliefs. Yahudim is referring to basically that ethnicity, that culture that had to do with those belief systems, etc. And so the Phoenicians, that region and the Canaanites, that whole area, that whole zone, was very much predominated by the worship of Saturn, the cult of Saturn, and all these types of things. And this, once again, has to do with why that belief system and everything that was being done around that region was so different vastly from what the Indian Aryas were doing and what the Persian Aryas were promoting and preaching, has very much to do with the fact that it is specifically the Rakshasa religion, okay? Or I should say an element of the Rakshasa religion that they specifically use to control how humans perceive their relationship with the Absolute, okay? With the Absolute person, and how they perceive the relationship with the very concept of the Absolute person. That is what the Rakshasa religion is all about. Because by controlling our perception thereof and influencing our perception thereof, they can guarantee they maintain control of the ones who lead and make the policies on the surface of this planet. Okay? So anyone in any large position that is publicly promoted or assisted monetarily like this, we're talking in like anybody's promoted in the millions, billions of dollar range to get a lot of huge, massive things accomplished like that, they are always being encouraged by these Rakshasa groups individually, and the groups that worship them knowingly or unknowingly behind the scenes. So, because Judaism is literally, in essence, Brahmavadi philosophy, that's really what Judaism actually is when you get to the root of it, with some other weird racist elements mixed in. And the racist elements are there actually for a specific reason, because there's a connection to those elements and why the Judaic peoples in many cases are racist themselves, and why towards other people, basically, who they don't consider Judaic in genetics, etc. There's a reason for that, actually. And that's also actually part or connected to the Rakshasas and what they've done in terms of involvement with these people genetically in the ancient past. So the genetic factor is like, it's an element of it, but it's not the main central element, but it is a factor. Just like the Arya-Caucasian connection is a factor, and all these other things, but it's not the main thing, because we're transcendent to the body at the end of the day. But there are elements here that are significant that people should never overlook. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to understand how these Judaic groups are seeing themselves and you in relationship to yourself, and why they do what they do. Okay, I'm talking about the religion here. Okay, and I'm not talking about the genetics. I'm talking about the religious belief. So you need to understand the full picture, not just little bits and pieces of it. You need to understand the full scope of this. So in ancient Canaan, in that whole ancient region, they had what was called the cult of Saturn, where they worshiped Saturn. Now Saturn represents he who inhibits, he who holds you back, he who keeps you bound within temporal matter, temporal existence, the harsh teacher, the harsh punisher, etc. So he was also known as the Lord of Agriculture, things like this, and that's naturally connected to money, economics, etc. Things of this sort. Basically everything that's set in stone has to do with like Saturn, basically. Like rigid rules, regulations, things you're bound by, held down by. So you'll notice whenever these words pop up, you're bound by this oath, you're bound by this, bound by that, the wedding ring, that's all Saturn related stuff. Anything that has to do with you being bound in any way, shape, or form at all, that's Saturn, okay? That's the worship of Saturn that has to do with him. In Sanskrit, he's known as Shani, as you know, and he is a specific planet that has his function and purpose. But the people in that region of Canaan, and of course the Phoenicians, which branched off from the Canaanites, and created basically their own little empire there, sea empire and things like that, they promoted this worship of Saturn. El, he was known as El. So you see in the Bible, Elohim, etc., things like this. Now these groups, they've continued on, and they're the ones who still today control the entire world's monetary system, which is why we're facing this monetary collapse coming up very soon here, which is completely pre-planned and orchestrated. And we've already laid out the details of how this is going to play out, what it's going to lead to, Mark of the Beast, etc. So all these things are aspects of this. Now what they've done with Krishna consciousness, okay, is they've basically just taken a lot of the way they see the world, the way the Judaic groups see the world according to their Talmudic scriptures and the Kabbalah, etc. Some of these branch off Judaic scriptures. And what they've done is they've melded it into and subversively put it into what they're trying to pass off as being Krishna consciousness worldwide. All right. So in essence, basically syncretic Brahmavadi, like we always talk about, Krishna consciousness, passed off as Krishna consciousness, passed off as personal devotion, that is Judaism in essence. And that's how the Yahudim, the Judaic groups, see the divinity and their relationship with divinity. Okay? More or less. So basically it's just the Talmud is basically a specific business manual for how to rule over people who are non-Judaic in genetics. That's literally what the Talmud is mostly about, predominantly speaking. Pretty much a business text. Which is why it's now promoted in North Korea, which seems really bizarre on the surface, but isn't very bizarre, because North Korea, there's evidence that it's actually a faked state. In other words, it may actually exist, but the entire thing's pretty much being orchestrated as one of these Judaic scheme aspects, the nuclear threat scare and all this type of stuff. But anyway, that's kind of a side topic there with that. And there's evidence that there's a lot of things related to the leadership in North Korea, the Kim Jong-il or whoever that guy is, that has to do with this Judaic stuff. And which is why they read the Talmud there, and like it's passed around and things like that. So but pretty much anywhere that has to do with communism is open to that type of stuff. So, or directly run by it. So we have a situation where, okay, these people come in, they poison Srila Prabhupada. They basically cause, by this taking place, another side branch aspect of Krishna consciousness to pop up, which is the Ritvik Sampradayism, which is promoted as the other side, the reform side, etc. And of course you have the Gaudiya Math side, which is basically being promoted as the get back to the original, esoteric stuff, blah 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 side of things. Once again, they're creating a candy store basically of different Krishna conscious folds and ideologies and things like this. And so when you go into a Krishna temple, right? You'll notice that there's always this very strange. You'll have a very good vibe there with Radha and Krishna directly, the deities and things, and with, of course, Prabhupada and the acharyas and stuff. But you always know this very strange vibe from anyone and everyone in there that you then later always find out is connected to them either being a Krishna cult member, which is basically adhering to some pretentious guru figure, or you find that they're either a Ritvik Sampradayist, or you find that they're a person trying to push the Gaudiya Math ideas and trying to bring people back to the quote-unquote esoteric teachings, etc. And then you'll then find that when you don't adhere to any of those views at all, that you're focused just on your direct relationship with the Lord there, and feeling satisfied with that, the animosity will actually increase as time goes on from all these people. So the animosity from the ISKCON side, the animosity because you don't necessarily accept their guru as yours, you'll end up gradually getting the silent treatment from these people. So they'll just completely never talk to you and never interact with you more and more and more as time goes on. The more they see that you're very fixed on not specifically accepting these people necessarily as acharyas, etc. And then the Ritvik Sampradaya side will gradually give you the silent treatment when they see that you're not interested in accepting the Ritvik Sampradayist ideas. You're not interested in dumping your sins onto Srila Prabhupada or anything of the sort, or adhering to those ideas. Then the animosity picks up. And the Gaudiya Math side, when they see you're not interested in what they're trying to promote, same thing, animosity just keeps increasing, picking up like this. And on top of that, in all three cases, you run into their preaching and personally tinged ideologies anyway, if you really pay attention and know what to look for. And this is another reason that compounds your desire to not to have anything to do with any of them in terms of their ideologies, etc., or on an interpersonal level. And what happens, you'll find over time, is it becomes actually miserable to interact with these people. Miserable. Like the very individuals we're told scripturally to supposedly seek out, etc., we have to seek these people out in just, either online like this, wherever they are scattered in the world, outside of the temple communities, or just individual people you may meet in the temple but aren't adhering to any of those things. Those people are like the ones practicing actual direct connection to Krishna consciousness. Where you'll notice that they're calm, they're laid back, they're relaxed, they're easy to interact with, they're very level-headed, sane, reasonable individuals, and also very fun-loving and very appreciative of you, what you have to say, and everything like this. And then you notice there's a stark contrast between the Krishna cult members and these other individuals. Then what you'll notice is the dynamic where any of these people who are actually practicing Krishna consciousness, who are actually friendly, actually kind, actually really passionate and enthusiastic about everything to do with Radha and Krishna, or Chaitanya, the pure devotees, etc., these people, you'll notice that these people who are really actually fun-loving Krishna devotees are always classified, either directly or like hush-hush, in a hush-hush manner, oh, that person over there is just a neophyte. And they associate, oh, because you're a neophyte, therefore that's why you're so enthusiastic, because you haven't recognized the quote-unquote gritty reality of Krishna consciousness. You haven't recognized the tapasya, the difficulties, the challenges. So they always try to make it out to be as if the ones actually in the calm, relaxed, innocent state are just by default neophytes, right? the ones not involved in any politics, not involved in any of this or any of that. And then you have the next classification of people who are classified as being the mid-level devotees, Madhyama Adhikaris, which basically are the ones who are delving into all these little specifics, right, of the preaching and stuff, and then they're the ones staying in the temples, either wearing saffron or doing deity service and stuff. They're basically classified as, they're the Madhyama Adhikaris, more or less. And this is just, it's like, there's this whole weird, like, culture of rank classifications of people in terms of how Krishna cult members will interact with them. So it's like, okay, those guys are neophytes, so we're just never going to talk with them ever. Or when we do talk with them, we're going to always talk with them in a way as if they're not very advanced or something, right? And this is how they'll talk to you. It's just, and it's not so much, it's not, because it really doesn't matter what level people are at or not, because the point is, they're looking at things, welcome Gary, they're looking at things from a rank system, and that's the problem. They're looking at things in terms of ranking, and that consciousness right there is a cult consciousness. That's not Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is not looking at people according to ranks or any of this type of stuff. Specifically, not those who are already engaged in devotion to Krishna. So then when you run into this dynamic, then you'll basically be like, wait, what's going on? So the scriptures are saying one thing here, sounds all great and dandy and wonderful, and then you run into every person, practically speaking, that you interact with face-to-face, you find is a Krishna cult member of some guru or some individual somewhere. And you can never talk with them. You can never interact with them, having a healthy conversation ever. Because it always keeps coming back to who their guru is, how qualified they are, how pure they are, and it never actually remains on the topic of Radha and Krishna. Their glories, their pastimes, their forms. Never. It always shifts to talking about who's qualified and who's not. All conversations always keep going back to this. And this, like, these cult members, they don't understand how abusive that silent treatment of others is, okay? Where you just stop talking with them. Because it's just, the situation is with Krishna, we're supposed to interact with each other. We're supposed to communicate. We're supposed to have loving interactions, loving communication, etc. So when we're given the silent treatment by the very people we're trying to associate with, right? And we have a lot of wonderful things to share with them and tell them about, talk with them about, etc. It makes you feel nasty. It makes you feel like dirt. It makes you feel like crap, right? Even though you know you're valuable, yes, it causes you to feel crappy, okay, in those situations. So it becomes difficult to be in temple settings. It becomes difficult to be around any Krishna cult member that's adhering to a Krishna cult, etc. Because it's like, it's all about their cultism. It's never about the actual valuing of each other on a deep level, you know, which is what Krishna consciousness is supposed to be about, okay? Free from all forms of impersonalism completely. One of the main factors of that is being able to reveal one's mind in confidence that, number one, you'll be loved and accepted and welcomed, and number two, that you will be appreciated, understood, and in confidence that you will actually get correct and accurate answers to your questions too. That you won't be sidelined or left in the dust, scratching your head, not getting the answers you're looking for. So, so you can feel out. You can feel out these elements of infiltration where you go. You can just sense them, and you can pick up on them if you're a sensitive individual, okay? And when you call this out, all sides of the Krishna cults will completely just go silent and not talk to you. They won't talk to you about the very thing that is the infiltration, common ground infiltration of all of them, basically, okay? Which is, we've discussed so many times, countless times over and over again, is the personalism mixed in with impersonalism. Brahmavadi tinges into the ideology. That's the ideological infiltration. And then the individual persons who are doing this infiltration are in almost practically every case across the board, with very few exceptions. And even in those exceptions, they are still connected to people who are Judaic in belief and ideology and or ethnic connections, etc., who are the same individuals who were involved in killing Srila Prabhupada, okay, poisoning him. So across the board, this either dead silence or all-out aggression, one or the other, always ends up leading to one of these two things. There's like no escaping this. And the only way you don't run into this is if you never talk, like, about what you actually believe or feel and what you know is true. If you just never talk about it with anybody, and you just basically go along to get along, then that's the only way you'll actually be welcomed and accepted and all this. If you basically shut up, that's the thing. If you basically shut up and never speak, then you'll be welcome, as long as you do that if you have alternative views. The second you start asking all the questions that need to be asked about the philosophy, about some things that seem off, about what's actually going on, immediately you'll meet with all-out aggression, all sides. And that aggression won't be based on anything that's actually like accurate. You won't be met with aggression because because when you're a Krishna devotee, you're not impersonalistically inclined at all. Of course you're not. So that's not the type of stuff you're asking about. You're asking about like real legitimate things, right? That have to do with who you are, what the nature of reality is, etc., with the personal understanding. So the aggression isn't basically the healthy type of aggression, which is shown towards actual false ideologies. No. It's an aggression shown towards you personally on a personal level, making you out to be and feel like some nasty, dirty individual that's like impure and this and that, feeling downtrodden, etc. You're always left with that sense. But at the core, you're like, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to actually feel this way. Krishna consciousness. You know that at the core. Hare Krishna Ishvaranandani. So you're left with this dilemma then. And then you go back home. So you go back to reading scriptures alone or whatever. You keep chanting Krishna's names alone, walking through the woods, thinking to yourself a lot about this over and over and over again. And then, you make attempts year after year after year to try and interact with these devotees over and over and over again, and you keep getting met with the same stuff every time. They're adhering to some false guru, and or they're adhering to some mad, insane, other false guru type of an idea, or they're just fixating on all of these other side points, which are impersonalistically tinged, or a combination of all three, and combinedly with that, because you are tapped into what's off with all those things, they vibrationally, sensation-wise, don't feel comfortable being around you. They don't. So to whatever degree the U.S. government via the CIA is involved in this, it's really kind of more of a minor thing. It's because the CIA is more about gathering intelligence and information. Yes, there are spies and things like that, but that's more on the spy side. Really, the main hard-hitting majority aspect of the infiltration is Judaic practitioners, believers, and subliminal infiltrators like this, who genuinely believe what they believe about Judaism to be true, and therefore their idea is basically that they're the ones who need to save the world. So here's what's really interesting about this. A lot of people don't know this about Judaism, because Judaic people are taught from when they're really young that it's basically their duty to save the world with the truth about the divinity, truth about God, which is, in their understanding, a Brahmavadi idea. So, because the Aryas, they're very attuned to all this stuff. They know about all these philosophies and things like that. But the Judaic groups, they have a Brahmavadi idea of the absolute, which is basically impersonalistic in essence, but then they believe the personality of Godhead is just a movement, vibrational, relational aspect of the Supreme, if there is a Supreme at all, in that sense to them. And they genuinely believe that is actually the truth, therefore. So in Judaism, they do not accept, the way Krishna devotees do, the forms of Radha and Krishna, but they do accept that they can come into us amongst our communities, etc., and convince us and teach us in ways to come to the Judaic understanding, either subversively or directly. And they genuinely believe that they can do this, and that's their destined goal and destined purpose as Judaic people, to do this, because they see themselves as eternally superior, a set-aside group that has a different genetics here and a different grouping and transcendence also. That's what they believe in at least the Orthodox Judaic side of things. And then in more the the modernized contemporary Judaic groups. They have much more of an emphasis and push on the monetary control aspect of things, more so than those false ideological things. But they still pretty much have the ideological stuff still in place. So we're talking about these individuals can look up the names of these individual people. The only single reason I'm not talking about their specific names in this video is they're very easy to find information on, and I want to focus on more so the topic at hand versus pinpointing these individuals you can find information on. And if you want a private message, you can talk to me more about it. But there's plenty of resources and information on who these people are. It's not very difficult to find out. Mainly because, these facts will remain the same, and those individuals may, down the road in the future, decide to stop infiltrating and decide to actually become genuine and loving and kind to others down the road. So then this video would be obsolete, basically, if I mentioned their names in it now. Then, it's like, that's why I don't mention names all the times in these videos. Sometimes I do, but it's always, if I do mention names, it's always in a respectful critique manner, not in a calling out completely all the way type manner. Therefore, the video remains legit infinitely into the future, even if they change their ways later on, etc. So I hope that makes sense anyway to anybody watching why I do it that way. So, but you can examine these symptoms and these experiences in all the Christian temples you go to, in any lecture circuit. I call them lecture circuits basically because you have, in most cases, you have people who are known to be false, not fully legit gurus, giving lectures to people, huge numbers of people. So people are being misled knowingly or unknowingly. And then they tend to cycle through these same types of people in any given region or area, right? So they'll cycle through people like this. And certain of these individuals have known to be also connected not only with Judaism, but also with the Jesuits specifically, going to a Jesuit college and school, being associated like that. So anyone or anything associated with the Jesuits is immediately suspect, because the Jesuits have always been about infiltrating other groups. This is a well-known thing, which is why the people in Europe were paranoid against them. And most people associate the Jesuits as being with the Roman Catholic Church, trying to bring people to Roman Catholicism, but really what the Jesuits are doing, because what Roman Catholicism actually is, and what the pedophiles running it know it is a sexual religion, okay, which is Rakshasa run, and a perverse sex indulgence belief system at the core. And it's all about encoded words and encoded terminologies, things like this. That's what the Jesuits themselves know about Roman Catholicism, and that's what they're trying to bring the world into, is their little occult fold like that. So the Roman Catholic Church is literally just another branch of this Rakshasa religion, whose one of their branches is the Judaic religions. Another branch is the Freemasons. Basically, Freemasons are basically the proxy non-Judaic side that's basically controlled by the Judaic groups subversively. Okay, that's in essence what Freemasonry is, because they teach all the same crap, the same Brahmavadi philosophy and things like that in Freemasonry that they do in Judaism. It's just basically, okay, it's the way to bring the goy, which were referred to as cattle, by the way. Anybody who doesn't know this, yeah. The Judaic texts, anyone who's non-genetically Jewish, according to their idea, is considered cattle. And because they have a fucked up idea of cattle and they're meat eaters, they don't see cattle like the Aryas do, that cattle are meant to be cherished and treated lovingly, like pets in a kind manner. No, they see cattle as things fit to be exploited and sacrificed and slaughtered. Yes, so because they see us as cattle, they see us also as fit to be slaughtered, sacrificed, and mistreated, etc. like this. And that if they do so, they're basically more or less justified in doing it. So they'll find like any little reason to justify doing that, and then, okay, there's our reason. They're classified as cattle scripturally, so now we have a reason to be like this towards them. Yes, it is really fucked up. Believe me, it's fucked up, very messed up, but it's real. And this is where the circumcision crap has been involved, and it's just, this story goes deep. Too much time to fill this video here, this discussion. Welcome, Chris. So yeah, ultimately, all of those elements are there, and you will find them anywhere you go across the board here. So pretty much what's happened today is the whole world, almost across the board, is getting the Judaic, Jesuit infiltrated version of what they want the world to understand as what Krishna consciousness is. Okay? So that's what people are getting now. They're coming, that's what they're seeing, that which isn't Krishna consciousness promoted as what we believe and teach, when that isn't what we believe and teach, actually. That's not what Krishna believed and taught. That's not what Radha taught. That's not what Lord Chaitanya taught. No, but that's what the world is getting, and this is doing two things. It's causing large numbers of people who are inclined towards personality cultism to people who are inclined towards accepting guru figureheads and middlemen, etc., to come in swarms and in waves, basically, and then fall into one of the Krishna cults. And or it's completely detracting people who see the subversiveness of that, and therefore get this mindset of avoiding the whole thing altogether as much as possible, practically speaking, on all levels, thinking that, oh, it's just the whole thing, top to bottom, anybody wearing tilak, anybody who's a Christian devotee is to some degree or another a cult member, worshiping some false guru somewhere along the line, blah, blah, blah. And so they avoid the entire thing completely, altogether. So you either have one of the two things happen. You have people inclined towards brainwashing come in, and then they get brainwashed because they're naturally inclined towards it, or you have people who are so skeptical about everything, they may research into it a little bit, and then they have nothing to do with it. Because in both cases, what are they getting? They're getting the Judaic, infiltrated Jesuit version of what they want the world to understand as being Krishna consciousness, which is personalism mixed with impersonalism, Brahmavadi, at the end of the day, is what that's called, which is a false ideology, which is the one-world religion, yes. So the Judaic groups, they're infiltrating Krishna consciousness just like they're infiltrating all of the other religions in the world now. The one-world religion that they want to be the one-world religion is that Brahmavadi ideology, personalism mixed with impersonalism, okay? Where people see that the divine supreme being is both at the same time personal and an impersonal at the same time. That is the one-world religion, okay? And unless your head's been under a rock for the last 50 plus years, you can see, you just look at what people are talking about, what people believe, what people adhere to, either openly or, unadmittedly. Secularism, the way secularism works and these discussions about divinity work, is people are already adhering to this one world religion, with or without even being religious in the first place, because that's how they process in the backs of their brains the nature of divinity, if they ever think about divinity at all. They think, okay, personal and impersonal. That's how the intellect processes divinity, which is an erroneous way to process divinity. So the reason it's going to be effective as the one world religion and become that and work as such, because nobody will need to be converted for this to be the one world religion. So all you have to do now is control the people within their belief systems to have Judaic Brahmavadi views about divinity. And then you've won. It's simple. They don't have to convert to a specific dogma of, okay, we believe this, A, B, C, and D to be part of the one world religion. No, you don't. You just have to have the conception in the back of your consciousness that the absolute truth is personal and impersonal, or you have an all-out impersonal view, or you have in the back of your mind, if there is a divinity, then that divinity is therefore personal and impersonal in nature. It must be, because the divinity is beyond our intellect, etc. So it gives you all these twisted things to work with in the back of your subconscious. So you can see it. If anybody with intelligence, common sense, and anybody who's a deep thinker can understand what the one world religion is, how the one world religion works. It's not complicated. It's very easy to see. Then once you come to this realization that that is what the one world religion is, and that real Krishna consciousness is literally the only thing that is speaking against that one world religion, literally the only actual tenets that are opposed to that, anywhere you go, you can even test this. Krishna consciousness, the real version, is the only one where there's no room for impersonalism whatsoever. None. And on top of that, you have full understanding of the nature of the personal divinity, completely, top to bottom, right, left, center. And your individual self, your relationship with that divinity, etc. So then an aspect of this one religion agenda is to sideline and segment real Krishna consciousness as just another fanatic side branch thing, making it out to be as if those who are genuinely super personal are fanatic, and as if we don't understand the nature of personal and impersonal, what that actually means or correlates with. In essence, making it out to be as if we're less intelligent than the ones who do adhere to the one world religion. You see? Okay? So this AI that's coming in also is going to be promoting this one world religion, right? And you can already see this taking place. So no conversion will be needed in the one world religion. It won't be necessary at all. You can be as secular as you want, as skeptic as you want, as agnostic as you want, and you'll still be a member of the one world religion, and you won't even know it in most cases. Yes, that's how it works. So, we talk about what real Krishna consciousness is, what we actually teach all the time. We have discussions about that all the time. But you have to understand the other side also. You really have to understand how they work, how they operate. We're dealing with extremely clever beings, okay? We're dealing with beings that are not human, that are far more smart and intelligent than humans in terms of their brain capacity, their intellect capacity. So you really have to have a hyper intellect and a hyper conscious understanding of things far beyond what the brain is able to process. Thankfully, we being eternal souls can understand concepts and topics inherently beyond words and beyond the intellect and beyond logic. And this is a symptom of being an eternal living being. You can understand these things on this level that are beyond explanation, that are beyond logic, reasoning, etc. And you can technically explain those things using logic, words, and reasoning in conversation, but still you can only actually understand them beyond logic and reasoning, you see, where you inherently grasp them. So this inherent grasp of the reality of the personality of the Supreme Person is only experienced in an eternally conscious being. And this is what AI will never be able to process, grasp, or understand or appreciate, simply because they're not an eternal living being. And unless an eternal living being is put inside of the body of an AI frame, okay, it's going to be the eternal living being in that frame that's put in that has the awareness of Radha and Krishna, the personality, not the frame that they're put in. It's not going to be their programming that's going to be able to grasp Radha and Krishna or their personalities. No. So, and that can happen, but I guarantee that's going to be very rare, and it's going to be the exception rather than the norm. In most cases, it's going to be programmed AI that has an impersonal personal conclusion, which is the same conclusion that the intellectual brain comes up with, even for an embodied conditioned soul that's using their brain or intellect to try and understand divinity, etc. It'll always come to that personal impersonal back and forth conclusion, wrong conclusion, because the intellect itself that works in the biological mechanism, the physiology, is also limited the way that AI machines are limited. Okay, and in many ways is actually more limited than the way AI machines will be limited in the years to come. So, but the way it works though is because all of that stuff seems correct, right, to most brains. It's thankfully it's never seen. I've understood the bullshittery of it all my whole life, thankfully. But in most cases, all of that stuff seems correct, that the absolute truth is both personal and impersonal. And to most brains, that seems accurate, okay? And we explain why this seems accurate to people. It's a very detailed science of how the brain operates, how the intellect works towards concepts of divinity, etc. So you can very easily calculate and pinpoint why people think the way they do wrongly, that the absolute truth has to be both personal and impersonal, or just all out impersonal, either one. It's very easy to understand why people think like that. But so with this infiltration then, welcome Zach, the question then is, well, okay, we know about the infiltration now, we know about what the one world religion is, what they're going to be promoting, so how do we actually very practically defeat them and go about not being influenced by them and not falling into one of these Krishna cults? Okay, and the way you do that is you maintain the core understanding of your eternal relationship with the Supreme Person, your direct relationship. You maintain your understanding and appreciation of your infinite uniqueness, your infinite real ego, your infinitely unique real ego, which is you, and the appreciation of eternally cultivating that real ego. Never falling into this bullshit concept of trying to get rid of your ego. That's the stupidest thing you could ever do. Krishna consciousness is all about absorbing in your ego as much as possible to reawaken what your eternal ego is and what your eternal preferences are. So you're very similar to God in nature. You're very, very similar to the goddess and God in nature. But you're still a unique, independent individual within your fold of eternal preference. Okay? So as far as the living beings go, each one of us is infinitely important. We're all beyond the concept of superior, inferior, and equal because we're infinitely unique. So these superior, inferior, equal ideas have nothing to do with reality. Reality is about infinite expression of the unique individual persons, both of the unique individual persons of the goddess and God and of ourselves individually with them in loving relationship. Okay? And when a person understands this, the whole idea of goddess and God being superior, us being inferior, etc., that dynamic and way of looking at it is absent. Okay? You don't look at it from the perspective of the goddess and God up here, me down here, me serving them in that type of way. No, that's not Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is you love the goddess and God for their infinite uniqueness, and you love yourself for your infinite uniqueness also, in relationship with them and with others. And you genuinely appreciate others' infinite uniqueness. That is Krishna consciousness. That's always what Krishna consciousness has been and always will be. Okay? So, literally, you will find here the very convenient way to realize who you eternally are, free from personality cultism and middlemen, gurus, and all these types of things. All of these things are externally thrown in impositions onto actual Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is always about that infinite, pure, direct connection. Always. And anyone who comes in the middle to help and assist, they're simply assisters, helpers like that. And you respect them as such, you love them as such. But you never look at things from a hierarchical perspective in either direction. You don't see yourself as superior or inferior or equal. You don't even look at it that way. You look at it as infinitely unique, valuable. You're valuable, I'm valuable, the goddess and God are valuable. Infinitely so. Okay? That's Krishna consciousness. And if people are telling you different things or they're promoting other ideas, you can know and you can feel that those are not true, that they're designed with a Saturnian essence to them. In other words, Saturnian essence beliefs and ideas involve you being bound in some way. Okay? So if you run into the things about you being bound or trapped or locked or having to do something by force or etc., and you're being encouraged to swamp down on your ego and these types of things. So yeah, there's the false ego, which is the perverse reflection of who you really are. And yes, the false ego falls off naturally by focusing on your real ego. You don't have to separately deal with getting rid of the false ego, because it's just a perverted mirror reflection of who you really are. So, so all these things spreading around now are just a bunch of bullshittery, where people are saying, "Oh, get rid of your ego, focus on transcending your ego." That's the dumbest thing ever. Really dumb ideas, actually. Because you can say that all you want, and people can jab their jaws about that all they want. But what do people end up doing? They end up either acting according to their real ego or their false ego on a daily basis. And that's what we do anyway at the end of the day. So whether somebody's sitting in meditation or interacting with people face to face, they're always going to be acting according to either the false, illusory ego or their real, eternal ego, one or the other. So there's never a question of people not having egos. It's not even a thing. It's never a thing that's ever experienced. And if somebody supposedly claims, "Oh, I've transcended my ego, I've this and that," people will claim this all the time. But what do they actually do? Pay attention to what they actually do. You realize, oh, they still have to eat, they still have to fart, they still have to drink water, they still have to breathe air. So the elements of both the real ego and the false ego are still at play, even with the person who supposedly has transcended their ego, which is not what you're supposed to do anyway. So, because people have all these wrong ideas of like what form is, what personality is, and all these other things. So therefore, they look at ego as something that ego isn't, and that's the problem. So, what you eternally want and desire the most, okay, the most, and what you're fixated and obsessed with eternally, that is your real ego, okay. that which is the based off of those eternal desires and wants, which are what you want the most, but is manifested in a limited, temporary, distorted framework, is the false ego. Okay, which if you pay attention to, you can get tapped into who your real ego is. Okay, who you really are, I should say, and what your eternal form is. So, Radhe Radhe, Hare Krishna. Yes, wonderful. So yes, Krishna consciousness is all about the form of Sri Radha, the form of Sri Krishna, going ever deeper into their infinite, ever-increasing beauty. And in the process of doing this, you realize your infinite, ever-increasing beauty as well. So both activities happen simultaneously. So in the Krishna cults, they'll preach and teach worshipping and being devoted to Radha and Krishna and other living beings, but they'll leave out focusing on your real ego part. Okay, that's how you can spot a Krishna cult from real Krishna consciousness. And the groups or they will teach one of the other two, but they won't teach all three and won't have all three going together at the same time. Love of Radha Krishna, the goddess and God, love of others deeply, genuinely, and love of oneself. All three have to be at play for the Krishna consciousness to actually be real and value-based, grateful-based, loving and affectionate-based. And if any of the three are missing, you're dealing with a Krishna cult. Yes. So you can test this and you can experiment. You can look into this. Just talk to people and see where they're at, see how they describe themselves, see how they describe their views, their practices, etc. And in every case, you'll be able to know for certain whether you're running into a Krishna cult member or an individual who's genuinely freed from the Krishna cultism and practicing real Krishna consciousness. Okay. And you'll have relationships like guru-disciple, you'll have relationships like friend to friend, parent, lovers, and things like this within this fold, but none of them will be relationships based on a hierarchical conception thereof. None of them will be. And that's the stark distinction between Krishna cultism and cultism in general from genuineness. Okay? Because cultism has to do with artificial impositions on the consciousness, mind, or heart, etc., that are artificially pushed into the mind. Genuineness has to do with genuineness, things that you actually feel, things that you actually inherently know for certain are true, and an open forum to argue things and to shout at people if you need to, because you know what you're saying is correct and what they're saying is bullshit. A forum where people can do this, and where it isn't actually a cult, and there's no pushed dogma that people have to absolutely adhere to. But basically, what we do have the common ground on is what is common sense. What's reasonable, sane common sense. So if somebody's naturally valuing the goddess and God, others, and themselves, they'll behave a certain set of ways. Of course you will, because you're not going to be murdering people. You're not going to be harming plants unnecessarily or animals unnecessarily. You're not going to be committing crimes on purpose. You're not going to be a harmful person. So that's all common sense, It's and so really the International Harinama Sankirtana movement is really just a name. I mean, you can call it anything. You can call it monkey's dung or monkey swinging on a branch, or you can call it, dog barking. You can call it any number of names. Dragon fire, you can call it, T-shirt or whatever. The point is, whatever name you use for what we're doing here, what we've got going, the facts of what we are doing and accomplishing together remains the same. Whatever name is posted on something, and the tenets are always the same common sense things and remain the same anyway. So, what it really all comes down to is just valuing the goddess and God face-to-face, super-personally, and valuing others super-personally, and valuing yourself super-personally, with no trace of impersonal anything in the back of your mind or in the forefront of your mind or anywhere. See? Because when you value others and value yourself, you understand the stupidity and the uselessness of impersonalism and that whole idea. You understand why it doesn't do any good for anyone, why it's not helpful, and how it's false. You understand this. It's just very clear. It's very easy to understand, you know. So if you're in a relationship with a hot chick, you're going to be face-to-face interacting with the hot chick, kissing her, etc. You're not going to be focusing on the light bulb in the corner of your room over and above the hot chick that's in front of you. What kind of idiot would do that? Krishna wouldn't even encourage you to do something so stupid. So for crying out loud, even though Krishna encourages celibacy, of course, Krishna himself would never encourage you to do something even on the mundane level that's stupid like that. Like, okay, focus on the light shining from the sun instead of on the beautiful female that's standing next to you. No. So Krishna consciousness, that's the very mundane example, but Krishna consciousness is like, okay, if you actually appreciate the goddess and god, you're going to be focusing on their forms, their beautiful interactions with you, their face-to-face. You're not going to be interested in just the light shining from their forms. It's not going to be like, oh, yeah, you know, you're gorgeous and beautiful, but I'm more interested in the light that's shining from you. Let's just fixate on this light that's shining from your skin. Hold on just a minute. I just keep your face and body over there for a second. Let me focus on this light here instead. What kind of idiot would do that? No idiot would do that. I mean, it's stupid. You know, it's dumb. So just what I encourage people to do all the time is just get our heads out of our philosophical asses and focus on what is easily observable in terms of common sense, both in this world and in a very easy to understand manner related to the transcendence. Okay? It's like, okay, what do you actually naturally desire and get a hard-on for in this world? Okay, therefore, the nature of absolute reality is related to that, but you just have to find out how and in what way, because everything that happens is coming from an original source, right? Everything that takes place, everything you think, there is an original source, reason behind why you're behaving the way you are now, what you're doing, why you desire what you desire, etc. These things. So, yeah, that's really what it comes down to. And, you know, for those of you newer, it seems some of you may be somewhat newer into what Krishna consciousness actually is. So I encourage you, there's a whole YouTube channel, Kamadeva Dasa, where we go really in depth on all of the philosophical points and stuff, all of the histories, scriptural references, on and on and on. We go into so much detail in other videos on all of those aspects of things. So if that really floats your boat and that's what you're really wanting to learn more about, I encourage you to check out that on YouTube, Kamadeva Dasa. There's a whole spiel of videos that you can click on any one of them. The topics are named by name if you want to learn more about any aspect of Krishna consciousness. And there's a slew of information. You'll never get tired of it because there's always more deep information coming in. Day after day, and always new revelations. In fact, all of the info we have currently right now is there's so much of it, it's very challenging to even put it into one volume because we have so many books, stacks and stacks of books worth of information on all this stuff that it's very challenging to summarize it in a way for people who are extremely inclined towards all the detailed aspects, simply because there are so many details that you could literally get lost and spend your entire life in all the details. And, you know, and then there's still more details you'll never even be touching upon. So the point being that it's really, the whole point of all the scriptures and the information is about getting to the point of loving the Supreme Person, appreciating their form, their personality face to face. That's the whole point of the information. And if a person's just fixating on all the information, all the tidbits of knowledge and info and stuff, and the result isn't that they're becoming more attracted to the Supreme Person face to face, then it's really just a bunch of wasted time and information. Because if it just leads you back to the impersonal personal conclusion again at the end of the day, then you've just wasted years of your life to come back to a conclusion you already originally had. A wrong conclusion, I should say, if that's the conclusion somebody has to start with, which was a wrong conclusion, personal and personal thing, then you just end up coming back to that wrong conclusion again, you know, if your fixation is on the info directly. So the point is, don't fall into that trap. It's a trap so many people fall into, where they get hooked on the info more than the person that the info is leading them to, or the person behind the information, right? And thus they get misled into all these either Krishna cults or their own personal concoctions, impersonalistic concoctions and things like that. So for those of you who may not know this, anything to do with impersonalism has been defeated already. Like, we've defeated impersonalism in every way you could possibly imagine, every little aspect of it. We've gone through all the arguments already on that, all the things that refute that wrong idea have already been covered countless times over. So we're dealing with the forms of Radha and Krishna. That's what we deal with here in the International Harinama Sankirtana movement, and glorifying their names daily, seeing them in others, etc. All these things like this. So that's what you'll find here. And yes, I encourage you all to look further into what I've been talking about here regarding this infiltration, the specific names of specific individuals, the details, so you understand the full scope of the situation. That what most of the world is getting and being told is Krishna consciousness isn't actually what Krishna consciousness is. No. Krishna consciousness is that which continuously uplifts you and encourages you to embrace your eternal individuality and uniqueness as the main emphasis, in fact. Because that infinite uniqueness is directly connected to how you express love, how you feel towards the goddess and God, and how you interact with them and others. That is Krishna consciousness. So, and you can see this for yourself. You'll understand if someone is trying to monopolize and say, okay, this is what Krishna consciousness is, and then they're claiming that's this and claiming it's that. For anyone who has an inclination to be fully and actually free from all types of bondage, like legitimately so, you will come to the real Krishna consciousness. If you have some weird subconscious desire to be bound by someone or something or some concept or trapped, you'll go to the other Krishna cult aspects, and you'll either get turned off completely or you will join them and become a Krishna cult member. One or the other. That's what's going to happen. Simply because of the abundance of information and details found within this fold of knowledge and understanding. So, I'll be signing out tonight, my friends, but I hope this conversation was useful and valuable to all of you, and I look forward to having discussions with you in the future, in the days and months ahead, and may you rest well and waken up enlivened with a newly invigorated and uplifting understanding of Krishna consciousness. And may you experience daily happiness and joy and a sense of calm that transcends the external material world every day and in every way. And until next time, talk to you later. Kamadeva Dasa signing out. Hare Krishna. Jaya Shri Radha.